Welcome to First State Kopites, a podcast for Delaware's Liverpool supporters and their friends.
Hey, welcome to the latest edition of First State Kopites. It's episode 12. No, it's not. It's episode 13 of our fourth season. I'm Paul, and I'm joined by Sean and Daz.
Groundhog Day.
Let's not get off on a bad moment. It's October 10th. We're obviously not thrilled that Liverpool lost 3-2 at Arsenal. They did win the Champions League game in midweek against Rangers, who universally are regarded as the worst team on the planet, because we wouldn't otherwise.
Universally,
for more than one reason
in this room.
I listened to the Guardian Football Weekly today, and Barney Ronay, who's pretty funereal kind of character, claimed it's time for a Viking funeral, with Jordan Henderson sent off on a boat down the Mersey and sent out to sea to celebrate the great things this team did in the past.
Ouch.
Well, I mean, to be fair to him, he did say there were things to be celebrated, but
Jordan Henderson's imminent death.
I spent the last couple of hours watching the Arsenal game back in full, and I must confess, was it Mark Twain who said rumors of my death, or whatever he said? Anyway, he wasn't dead. Someone said he
exaggerated.
Exactly. He wasn't dead, and he was still writing. I feel like that's where we are. That may not be the opinion of everyone on the call today. So I won't go for the big question. We'll leave that till the end of where you think we are in our lifetime, because whether we're at a funeral march upcoming, or whether we're just in a little bit of transition and a few things need to go away. I do want to spend the first part doing a deep dive into the Arsenal game. We'll touch on the Rangers game, because again, what's the point of talking about a team who are clearly shouldn't be on playing on the same field as us. And then we'll get in a third part into what's coming up, where we play that team that has no hope, and then we play the most boring team on the planet right now with that Norwegian robot didn't score a hat-trick the weekend. Maybe that's a good sign for us.
The Russian is cut. The Russian is cut.
You might get to witness a hat trick, huh, Paul? Hopefully not.
I'm going to leave if he scores two. I'm not going to stay. Just by the way, I will be at Anfield on Saturday at 4:30, yelling not for that blonde guy who plays for Man City.
Scandinavian meat shield.
None of the blonde guys who play for Man City. Let's start there. Okay, let's start with the Arsenal game. I have done a deep dive into this. I have a minute by minute, which I'm going to kind of challenge you with. I think there's three things to talk about for me. One is, when did Michael Oliver decide to become Martin Atkinson? Because there's like so much that we could talk about in that space. And I used to say, there's so many bad referees out there, but Michael Oliver, he's straight up. Tompkins Times would tell you for years he was. I feel like he's taken on a different mantle this last couple of months. Let's talk about Arsenal as well. I think they very much play in the image of their manager, who I think is a detestable person, and I think some bad things are going to come out about him in the future. And then I think we had some really great moments which got lost in the general narrative. And some of the people had great moments, I think, were Trent, Diogo Jota, and Darwin Nunez, and Luis Diaz. Let's pause there. Let's go back to the Michael Oliver. I don't know where you want to begin. I'll start with you, Daz. Let's start in the first minute. Apparently, VAR was unable to find the right film to check whether Saka was offside for the first goal. Not Michael.
That was what's his face from the ESPN, right? Dale Johnson. Is that his name?
Well, so if you look at it back, there's no lines ever shown. You look at it and no, offside. It's
that's what Enrique was saying in our chat. Remember, he's like, I wouldn't mind seeing some lines on that.
Yep. 8th minute, Martinelli trips himself and Diaz gets a yellow card. 14th minute, Trent is fouled more significantly than that, nothing giving. Had 14 minutes, 30 seconds later, Gabriel, the ball hits him on the chest, clearly, because that's what he told us. on the replay, it seems the ball hit his hand somewhere out of camera view if you're watching this on YouTube. Saka gets 3 bizarre fouls, and someone saw this online, a tweet that described him as Kanesian. That's not in John Maynard Keynes. That's in Harry Kane kind of diving territory. And then why no handball for his like that fake thing he did in the second half where he tried to pretend he created a goal. 35th minute, offside called on Jota, was nowhere near the ball. Diaz was through, got bumped in the back and called back for offside. Surprise, surprise. Let me finish with 2 more things. Partey. He assaulted Diaz twice in about 3 minutes in the first half, resulting in apparently like a month or 2 out for Diaz on the knee injury. Not only was there no foul for the second, there wasn't even a card for the first where he pulled him back by the hair. And then the final one, just love this. Joe Gomez, 25 seconds throw-in, booked for time wasting. Does this mean that everyone we're going to play against for the remainder of the season is going to get 3 yellow cards for time wasting? Because that's what happens in our games.
But it makes it worse is like they did it 2 or 3 times with no censure, but we did it and we got censured for it. So
which is very Martin Atkinson. Just
yeah. Well, that's look, 30,000-foot viewers, like as much as we rail against referees, and we do, I think that our consistent cry is for consistency, and it doesn't seem to happen. In terms of the handball, they looked at, it's just the way that they twist themselves up into knots to justify why it is or isn't. It should just be it is or it isn't. Like, look, and we live and die by subjectivity, less so, quote unquote, than we used to with referees because of video technology. But it doesn't feel like it's really changed. It's like the guys in the box are still going to do, for the most part, and there's some notable exceptions, but for the most part, they're going to back the guy on the field. And they slip that bullshit little phrase in there to cover them. To cover themselves, clear and obvious. So it's it's like I said, it's like those are ordinarily given, and people on our own fan base, it's like, well, it was the distance and they didn't have time to pull it out. I'm like, the problem is it changes so frequently. Like you're left in limbo, and again, it adds more confusion to it.
There's no way that if that was Saka and Van Dijk that they don't give the penalty against us. You can't convince me of it. There's no way. They definitely give that against us.
Have you seen another example of anyone else not getting a penalty for that?
Well, the one with Dan Burn that they put up for Newcastle, he wasn't even facing it. He was falling back down with his hands up in the air. The ball hit him on the back of his hand, and they gave a penalty for that.
So again, have you seen an example where someone else hasn't got a penalty from anything close to that?
I was agreeing with you. Like it's the lack of consistency. And look, and I think I said this in our chat as well. It's becoming boring, and the problem is it's becoming normalized that more often than not these go against us.
Yeah.
And it's too frequent that like, everyone's like, you Scouse is always complaining that everything's against you, Liverpool. I'm like, there's 2 within the same game that could have gone either way, and they both went against us. It's like it's tough not to feel aggrieved. And we'll come on to talk about this. Like I'm kind of with you. As poor as we were on the day, like there were 2 terrible decisions away from getting a point, or maybe all 3 points in that. Because when we got our goal back, like we started to pin them back. We had like a real moment of dominance, and then just a silly decision by Tsimikas, and then we're just like casually observing what's going on around us without like really trying to snuff out the danger before it had a chance to begin, which happened a couple of times. And think about the Everton game; it was the same thing. We had 3 corners that turned into opportunities going the other way. So it's these the problems and the idiocy, for lack of a better way of putting it, are self-inflicted. And they seem to be endemic and systemic, because there's enough data from this season to suggest that like this is happening too frequently for it not to be something that's an actual issue that should be addressed.
So I wanted to start with the refereeing, because I do think that was like instrumental in how the game turned out. Again, having watched it back, Arsenal like had I had a couple of moments, and if I had to criticize us, I'd be saying, like, how the hell did we go in 2-1 down at halftime? No, they wanted, like, the fans. I don't know if you saw it on the TV, but like the board goes up for 5 minutes left in the first half, and their fans are groaning, like, oh, we don't need any more of this. Let's get to halftime. Which I think was a fair reflection on kind of where we were, and like we definitely talk about like what happened there. But I think overall, if we'd have had even the balance of the calls in that first half, then it wouldn't have been 2-1 at half time for Arsenal under any circumstances. We'd have had a penalty. We'd have had a few other things going our way. We might even have had Thomas Partey red carded. But anyway, that's a different story.
Well, the Partey, the second one that would ended up injuring Luis Diaz, you see those quite frequently in league games. Like when we watch it back in the cold light of day, it's egregious. But when it happened, it just looked like it was like a robust challenge between two professionals.
Yeah.
But then you look at it back and you're like, he mugged him.
He did. He didn't get the
ball. I thought it immediately. It looked ridiculous. It looked like Partey just trucked over him.
Yep.
And I was like, that's not a foul. Like, since when's that not a foul?
So let's not talk about Thomas Partey's rap sheet. Let's move on. And so let's Sean, and if you have anything to add in terms of the referee, because I do think that's a starting point for the narrative, which is like, oh, we're shit, and which we've heard from several people, and all our players are playing terribly, which I think is nuanced. But I think that there was like a lot of things against them in that game, and not least of which was the officiating.
I think I don't know. I would just say a couple of things. I do think, like, I think that both of the penalty calls were garbage. I thought ours was a clear penalty. I'm not even sure Thiago touched Jesus for the second one. That was a horrible call. And a number of Arsenal fans are even admitting that one was a terrible call.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, on top of that, I thought we played very bad for our standard. We were terrible, but like, I didn't come away overly impressed with them.
Which phase was that we thought we were terrible?
I thought we were terrible for the first 20 or 25 minutes, and then we settled into the game, and we were much better. Then I thought they basically dominated the second half until they got the penalty. And then after that, we actually rebounded, but Klopp had already taken Salah off, and I thought that totally threw the team off. And we were trying to create things, and we were missing Salah.
Yeah.
And then we, after a period of that, basically not much happened until extra time.
So doing my deep dive analysis. So let's not talk about Arsenal. Let's talk about kind of our performance. Because I watching it back, we totally controlled the first half, and it wasn't just about possession. Where we had possession, there were times when we were camped out at the edge of their box. So we'll go on to that. But I will say, my notes say, because I felt like watching it real time. In the second half, we were under the cosh all the time. What I basically noted was we had 3 moments of chaos, and then on the fourth one, the diving bastard dived. That's my notes. Daz.
Well, you kind of led the witness with the diving bastard. You didn't have to put dived. Just good at the diving bastard.
Well, he dived multiple times outside the box, and then he dived in the box. Because apparently he was killed by Shimikas at one point, because they were bringing on the I don't know, the funeral cart, and then miraculously he came back on. Anyway,
well, it's like I'm just happy in this day and age that people can recover that quickly. It's like it's a real testament to modern medicine.
Modern medicine, yeah.
Because he was clearly shot a number of times. I had someone in the crowd.
The diving, just so you can just get it, like, the diving overall was absurd, particularly from Jesus and Saka. It was totally ridiculous.
Martinelli, yes, him too.
Yeah, I think the fact that Luis Diaz doesn't speak English, he probably just said what he wanted to say was, this motherfucker tripped himself, you dozy prick.
Yeah.
But he's like, I don't know how to say that in English, so I'm just going to take the card and walk away, because my son was watching with me, and he's like, he just tripped himself. I'm like,
I guess that's not a call they review on VAR, a yellow card like that.
Well, Martinelli did go down shortly afterwards, and the call wasn't made, which makes me wonder if someone said in his ear he tripped himself in the previous one.
I mean, if it's VAR reviewed, I don't know how you don't overturn that. It's just some of the calls are like, how does VAR not overturn that? It's so obvious. But
That's
was
my
there a
problem.
mention?
Like we still seem to live in an age like where it's like it's swings and roundabouts. Like you'll get yours eventually. Like the whole reason that this technology was brought in, so
exactly,
it was black and white, that you didn't have to like, well, you'll get your call later on. Like it's like you were just saying that Martinelli actually got fouled later on. That foul's a foul. Like
it's bullshit. It's bullshit. They don't want it to work. The PGMOL don't want the system to work. I'm convinced of it.
So
and there's no oversight.
I didn't see evidence with my own eyes, but clearly in this game there was some dreadful stuff going on. How about let us back to referees? But
because you wanted to talk about them, and then
no,
you rambled off about a diving, busted diving. I'm like, let me bring it back.
Topic 1A, Paul.
Yeah,
and now
it's in the agenda.
Well, maybe they were just so bad we need to come back to how bad they were. I just wanted to talk about our performance, because I actually think in the first half we were really, really quite good. And I know a lot of the people talk about like Liverpool had sporadic chances, but there was one where was it Gabriel? Like Ramsdale had to make some great save because the ball was going to Nunez, I think.
That doesn't count as a shot on goal. I don't believe.
No, it doesn't. But I'll say they felt under pressure just before we scored. Ramsdale like tries to do this like funny thing against Nunez, ends up kicking the ball out of play.
Yeah, so the announcers, the funniest thing was the announcers hyped Ramsdale up for that. They're like, oh, he really threw Nunez there.
Yeah,
and he punted the ball out of bounds.
Came right back down and we scored.
That's exactly what Nunez is supposed to do. Like,
and that loser of a right back of ours played a ball forward that created havoc, frankly. The best.
Oh, they called it a.
Oh yeah, they called it a hopeful or an aimless pass. It was exactly where he wanted to put it. What are you talking about?
So I think one of the observations I make is that the thing we could have improved was so often we've done that in the past, right? We'll knock a ball long. We don't necessarily win the first ball. We win the second ball. That was a moment where we won the second ball. There was not enough of that going on. I think Virgil tried a lot of diagonals to Salah, but the
Tomiyasu cut almost all of them.
Well, no,
I'll just say like Tomiyasu is a hell of a player. I think he's their best defender in that team.
You're missing my point, which is it's fine that he wins it, but then we win the second ball in like when we're at our very best, and we didn't win a lot of second balls in those situations. And in the second half, which is a different point, like we had opportunities to knock the ball over the back, and we kept hitting like, I don't know, like short, like halfway balls to Nunez, which didn't quite end up. And when we finally hit one over the top, he knocks it across the penalty area, and Mo Salah's there to slot. Oh no, we've taken him off already. Yes. There were loads of moments where it's like we were almost perfect, you know.
Well, the relief, like I think what should tell you, like one indication that we weren't as bad as we might have believed right after the match was the look of absolute relief on the Arsenal players' face that it was over, that they'd weathered it.
Yeah.
You also might be able to say like they haven't beaten us outright in the last 18 games in all competitions. I think they were in the penalty shootout, I believe, in one of our cup matches. But I think overall, like they kept harping on about this. I'm like, oh great, here comes the commentator's curse. Oh, these poor sons of bitches haven't won a game against Liverpool in 18. Wait for it. And so like I said, it was like the fact that there was such a big let off for the players at the end tells you that A, how much it meant to them, and B, that like the relief that they'd actually pulled it off.
Well, the reality is, like, I mean, I know that like they're in form now and they've got like some young, exciting players and all, but just take a step back and compare the teams one for one. How many of their players actually get into our starting 11? Like maybe Odegaard, maybe
Saka.
Odegaard.
You're going to pick Saka over Salah?
No, I put him on the other side.
So he gets in over Diaz? I mean, I love Saka too. I'm not sure. I mean,
maybe not. You
know, I love Saka, but I don't know. Like that's a closer one. but
makes the squad. Yes, not starting, maybe not. Yeah, I mean, maybe I've overrepresented myself.
They have some quality depth in a few positions, but not everywhere. Like they're pretty thin. I would say their second options on the wing and in midfield aren't very good. If you think about how far they drop off from like Nketiah to Saka, or I don't know who is their backup midfielder. They play like Xhaka and Partey in most games, and both of them get injured kind of frequently, I think. So, so the point is like, I mean, I kind of agree with your overall point, Paul, in that like we haven't become like a just totally crap team overnight. There's just a lot going on. It's not coming together. The tactics have been bad. You know, a lot of players out of form. But you know, I still think we'll figure it out. But it's just, you know, it might not be until after the World Cup, in which case it's going to be too late. So
I think it's a comparative thing, though, too, isn't it? Like, as we just remember how good we were. It's like going from driving the Lamborghini to the Porsche. They're still both great vehicles, but one's just sexier and performs better. And I think about this all the time. It's like, that Sean Rogers always talks about the inner chimps, and I think it's probably best that we don't do a post-match analysis or a post-match show, because there'd be a lot of effing and blinding and potentially whining and drinking heavily. So, like, if you get to look at it in a colder light of day, we're not. There are problems, and we just don't look like ourselves. And like I said, I think a lot of it comes down to the comparative nature of it. And then you have people on all kinds of social media looking for whatever clout, like F this guy, F that guy, FFSG, Klopp out. It's like everyone's always just looking for a scapegoat. And I knew, Paul, you and I were talking about this earlier. It's like there's myriad things that are probably the confluence of all of them is our performance right now. They're all coming together to make it to just on-field product is not what it was, and it's tough to swallow, because it was so recent that we were so good, and now we're just not as good as we were. And we're currently on 10 points. What does that put us in 10th in the league? It's kind of grim viewing, but we're still in all cup competitions, and there's every chance that when these guys come back, or that Klopp gets right when he has a month with quite a few of our guys that aren't going away to the World Cup, that we could be a different contingent by the time that everyone comes back.
Yeah. So I think there's, so my perspective is, again, see, this is the first game I'll watch back in detail, but it strikes me that a few things going our way against the team that, let's remember, are top of the Premier League right now. I honestly feel like it's a game we should have won. At about 60 minutes yesterday, I stood next to somebody going like, "Oh, this is awful." I'm like, I honestly think we're going to win this. Look back at it today at 60. It's like they had a moment of chaos in that area. We had like chances going in the other direction. Honestly, a different scenario where we'd not gone down at halftime 2-1. I honestly think the narrative would have been they're back, and I don't think too much different would have had to happen.
Well, you could argue the same thing against Fulham. That one off the crossbar from Jordan Henderson, the dying embers of the game. That's the type of win that we'd had numerous times in our title winning season, and they just found a way to win.
Well, that's why, like, if you go back and think about how things were pre-Klopp, like those were the type of things we would always complain about, like, oh, well, if that one didn't go in, or if we got that call. But we've just been so dominant under Klopp that even when those things go against us, we still manage to win the match usually. And it's a little bit, I think it's a matter of perspective, and I don't know what the issues are with the team, but I mean I do trust Klopp to sort it out eventually. It's just this period where we're trying to figure it out is painful.
So here's something I challenge, because I think that yes, they sometimes need things to go for them, and last season they probably needed like Manchester City not to get handball penalties when the ball hits somebody's shoulder or arm,
or not have them called against them when it's clearly a handball.
Have them called against them against Everton, right? So I think the fine margins have been there. You drop off slightly, and things don't go with you. like there was like the Rashford goal we conceded at Old Trafford. Oh, that would have been offside in previous years. It's like, what?
Right. Yeah.
There've been a ton of moments. I did notice today, by the way, that Douglas Costa, the Villa midfielder, leaned his head into a Forest player, and they've reviewed it on VAR, and it was nothing going on. It's like, that looked awfully like the thing that Nunez got sent off for. So I think fine margins screwed us last year, but fine margins, because we're not quite at the same level, are killing us this year. So I want to do just a quick few things before we finish part one on Arsenal, because I watched it back and I hate the bastards. I hate all of them. Like, I think they're all in the image of Arteta, and I don't like him at all. Nothing wrong with him, and I think it's going to come out in the wash. Which diver do we want to talk about first? Martinelli, Saka, Jesus. The one thing I would say is, like, I was like stood next to somebody, and like, Shaka had a shot in the 61st minute, because I wrote it down. Like, Shaka playing? I didn't even realize he was playing. What?
Oh yeah.
And Odegaard, he's a bit of a fraud, isn't he?
I think Odegaard is a good player.
Yeah, we might have to give you a yellow card for that one. You went in a little high over the ball there, I think, Paul.
Well, so again, having the benefit of being able to pause it, go, take a breath. He had moments.
No, he's still a dickhead.
But honestly, so actually Odegaard wasn't a dickhead. Like, he was not. He did not dive, but he did dive in actually on. Was it Chimik? Oh,
He got a yellow card.
That was a pretty awful challenge. I think that
you can be a great player and still be a dickhead. I mean, there's plenty of examples.
I don't know how great he is. I think is my observation. He had some great touches, but Liverpool sure thought he was the patsy in terms of watching it back. Like, they pressed him like a lot. They took the ball off him. He had his moments, but generally, and that's why he got hooked. I think 70, because I think Arteta probably realized that, like, oh, he's still on the field. Liverpool are going to focus on him and take the ball off him.
Yeah, I mean, the diving was ridiculous. I thought, especially with Saka and Jesus, but yeah, I mean, I don't find them. I think their style of football is likable. I don't find them a particularly likable or I don't see them doing a whole lot this year, I guess, in the long run. I know they're in first right now, but they just seem really kind of weak to me and vulnerable in general. And I think if we were on it, we could have torn them apart, but we're just not there right now. So,
well, they're kind of to draw like a really broad analogy, they kind of remind me of the Red Sox a little bit. Everyone seemed to have like a soft spot for them when they were the lovable losers. Now that they're winning again, they're dickheads.
Well, I mean, I think Arsenal have usually played an attractive brand of football, at least since Wenger's been there, right? And so, I mean, I've always kind of enjoyed that compared to, Chelsea, for example. But yeah, there's something about their fans that are a bit obnoxious now that they're okay, like they're doing like they might make top 4 this year, but they're acting like they're the next great team in the making, and I just don't buy into Arteta as a manager. And there are certain players in their team I don't believe in, Xhaka, Ramsdale. I mean, I don't really see them competing for the title this year, I guess is what I'm saying. And I don't think they're going to win Europa or anything else either, personally.
Well, you have to give them their due.
I mean, they're definitely improved. I mean, they look better. And
they've won 8 of 9, and they've beaten Liverpool, Spurs, and Manchester United. Like, the Spurs game was probably an outlier.
They didn't beat United.
I mean, not United.
I'm not saying they're crap, but I'm saying if the red card doesn't happen against Spurs,
yes,
I think that they might lose that one.
And if we had gotten a penalty and that first goal hadn't accounted, there's ifs and buts and sweets and candy. Wouldn't Christmas time be dandy? The thing is, like, they are where they are. So you have to give them their due. That so they do play an attractive brand of football. It's no less attractive than what they played last year. The difference is they're finding ways to win. So that was the same thing that people used to level at us, like, oh, you jammy bastards, you got that last minute winner, you spawny buggers got one out when you clearly weren't in the ascendancy, or blah 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 blah. So give them their due. I agree with you to a very real extent. I think that there's some systemic flaws, but they've gone a long way to closing them, to cinching them up a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've got it in them to win the league. Not unless that Norwegian ends up in a hospital bed, because
I don't think they'll be within 10 points of City by the end of the season. I mean, it's. I think they got. I think Saliba and Gabriel as a pair is an improvement over what they've had. I think sliding Ben White to right back makes a lot more sense than playing him center back, and I think that alone improves them significantly, because their defense was horrendous the last few years.
Yeah,
but it's still not that great. I mean, like, Gabriel's not like all that convincing all the time, and Xhaka is still Xhaka. Like, I think, I mean, you got to give them their due, but I just think that they're getting a little bit overhyped right now. I mean, I think they're probably a top 4 team this year.
Then let them see what it feels like not to be the underdogs anymore. Remember that?
So that was, I think that was this match, and that was the other thing I was going to say. I mean, this was, in a lot of ways, this was a bigger match for them than it was for us, even though they're top of the table and we're struggling.
Yeah,
this is probably the biggest match they've had in
legitimizes
how long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, they were really up for it, and so was the crowd. And
I don't think we quite appreciated that, actually. That how much it meant to them. I would say I'm really taken with your point, though, Sean. It's like, how many of their players would we have? Probably aren't many.
Ramsdale, no. Backline, no. I'd take Tommy as a left back.
I had a really important point to
over
make.
Robbo.
Last week on, I'm trying. Was it one of Athletics Football Weekly podcast? I wish I knew who said this, but someone said Saliba, top 5 centre back in the world right now.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, he's been good. I would say, like, he's been. I think he is. If you had to pick one player that has really improved them the most this year, I think it's him. But he's not a top 5 center back, not yet. He might get there, but he's not there yet.
I mean, I'm like slightly joking about this, but do you think if he came to us, he'd be in our top 5?
No, well, he wouldn't be in our. I mean, no, I don't think he starts ahead of.
Maybe Nat Phillips.
Maybe ahead of Nat Phillips. Yeah.
I mean, maybe Gomez right now. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Gomez is covering right back for us, so probably not. I mean, he's definitely not ahead of Matip or Konate.
So he comes to Liverpool. He's a top 5 centre back in Merseyside. Okay, great. Love it. Let's end part 1 there, and let's end part 1 there. Hey, welcome back to part 2. We lied. We're only doing 2 parts today. There was the Arsenal debrief, and then we're going to go in to talk about the Champions League team that we beat, and we all mentioned the Europa League team that we didn't beat. There've been lots of derogatory comments about beating Rangers, because apparently they shouldn't be in the Champions League, and whatever formation we'd have played, we'd have beaten them. I'm not sure that's all true, but let's do it very quick. I don't know if you remember back to last week. Rangers, 2-0. We only scored from set plays. Daz.
Their goalkeeper had an absolute blinder. That could have been 7 quite easily.
Yeah.
And what's his face? Nunez. What's his face? Jesus. See myself out. Nunez could have had 3 or 4 by himself if it was like 4 or 5 yards either side. Well, not even that much, 2 or 3 yards in either direction of where he hit the balls. I think it was described as a boring 2-0 win, and I think that's exactly what we needed. Or I felt that's what we needed, considering we just trotted that formation out after one trial period. It just seemed to make sense, and then it didn't against Arsenal. So because that personnel was at energy levels, it could have been all of the above, but it was a nice win against Rangers. The fact that it was the first time we ever played them, and it was a nice win. Somewhat routine. I think a lot of people were concerned about the chances that we gave up in the end. And I think that circles back to what's been plaguing us for most of the season is like the quality of the chances that we're giving up. They're pretty decent XG. It's not like a pop from 30 yards outside the box. It's like they're getting cleared off the goal line. We're scrambling to get stuff clear. So again, it could fit the narrative. We do seem a little bit low on confidence, but and that would have felt about right, because if nothing else, it put us in a much, much better position to advance in this group. And the fact that Ajax got absolutely tonked. We thought 4-1 was bad. Ajax took 6. It could have been for us too, but they did take 6. So it buoyed me a little bit that maybe we can still be a cup team, because I think that Klopp all but conceded the fact that the league is dead to us.
Yeah.
Although on these here airwaves, we did it last year, and it went to the last game of the season. I just doesn't have that same feeling this year. But hey, man, I'm more than happy to chew on that crow pie.
Yeah.
Well, big servings of it, crow legs sticking out, maybe some beaks. I don't know.
So you are talking about the team that's been in 3 Champions League finals in 5 years. So I think you probably don't want to get carried away in dismissing their chances. But the Rangers game, final thoughts about the Rangers game, and then we'll look ahead to Rangers this week, which clearly can't be an important game because they don't deserve to be here. And then we play Manchester City on Saturday. But first, the Rangers game last week. Sean?
I thought we completely dominated them. I was excited to see the formation change. They didn't really try to attack us. They sort of sit back and tried to counter us, but they really got absolutely literally nothing until the 85th minute. They didn't have a single shot from inside the box until the 85th minute. And they had a couple different chances, like Daz was saying. But we had taken a lot of players off. We rotated a lot because we were 2-0 up and just in total control of the match. I mean, it wasn't a close match. And like Daz, we easily could have scored 5 or more. Their goalkeeper saved a ton, and so yeah, I mean, it I think it gave a lot of people a lot of confidence going into the Arsenal match. And like you said, I don't think that was quite as bad as people are making out. Although we still aren't quite ourselves yet, which is not great when you're heading into playing Man City this weekend. But hopefully we can kind of sort those things out without Diaz and Trent, unfortunately.
Wow.
So not a great start to sorting it out.
That's a big without.
Well, I mean, it goes to kind of the point where we might need to just change tactics, and we got Gomez at right back and probably Jota at left wing instead of Diaz. So we just have to plan to play a little bit different. Probably.
So let's look ahead. But who are these people who thought that the Rangers set us up for play against Arsenal? Because I didn't hear any of those people going into the game, and there's none of them afterwards.
I mean, I don't know. I felt a lot more confident after seeing us play against Rangers because I felt that whatever the hell we were trying to do for most of the beginning of the season was just a disaster with whatever the 5 or 6 players straight across the line and get killed on the counter. So I was happy to see the formation change. I thought it worked a lot better. So
what you're telling me is this is a First State Kopites, a copyrighted view of how the Rangers game played into the okay, all right.
You heard it here first and last.
Oh yeah, we got all the insights.
So let's look ahead. First game. What could the problem be? No Trent and no Diaz, no 100 midfielders that were not available. My biggest concern, frankly, is who is available to play in this one, given we put quite a lot into the last week. Daz.
I hear that the tea lady can swing a mean ball in from a fullback position. Maybe give her a shot. Well, it's to your point. It's looking increasingly like Trent's going to be out for a while. The reports today say that Diaz is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, not back for the World Cup. Yeah,
an aging core of veterans that seem to have that they're running around on their bollocks because they got no legs left. I don't know. Maybe it is one for the kids. I don't think he's brave enough to do that because there's too much riding on it. I think that he almost has to go again, and maybe just say if City's going to be City, we'll go with what we've got. He's thrown some crazy lineups together. Think about what he did with the Everton match in the cup. He's not. But I don't think that he has the confidence of the players necessarily to do that. But then again, like on the other side of that is like maybe throw a bunch of people that don't seem to be be affected by that harshly by the malaise. Maybe put Ibu and Gomez at center back as a pairing. Throw Calvin Ramsey in at right back. I believe he's played against these Muppets before. Like you're kind of stuck with Jimmy. Midfield is anyone's guess. Maybe it's Elliott, and you'll see Elliott and Carvalho in there just to give the other guys a break. Fabinho, play the 4-3-3. Let Nunez go again because he seems like he has boundless energy. Jota for 60 minutes on one side and Salah for 60 on the other side, and see what you get. Because he doesn't really have many options. This is the kind of, I hate to say it, but it's starting to take on the feeling of the pandemic season a little bit too. Not just in terms of injuries, but also in terms of form.
Yeah. Well, I think the two are intertwined, aren't they? But given that Rangers aren't that good, we could probably play Clarkson and like some other person from the reserves.
Sheetik?
But yeah, him too. Yeah, who's never played for us. Yeah. So I'm half joking, but where's the guy, the midfielder that came in and they talked about him being really good? The Spanish guy,
Rakitic. Begins with a B. Yes, Rakitic
yes.
plays. He plays.
No,
Yeah,
I
that guy.
think that's where I was just. Maybe I was pronouncing his name wrong. Is it?
I thought he had said Rakitic. And I don't think he's available to us.
Is it Bashitic?
Yes, that's it.
He's 17.
Yeah.
I mean, he has looked good so far.
He hasn't been around. He was in the early squads at the beginning. Anyway, I'm being serious here. He was in the squads at the early part of the season and has not been there recently. I'm wondering whether that's an option.
I mean, you're making me think he's definitely going to play Milner. He's definitely going to play Milner in this one. He definitely is. I think he might start him at right back to give Gomez a rest, and then
he played for 45 minutes.
Well, who else are we going to play at right back?
Him. Or Calvin Ramsey. Well, me.
Are we going to? Okay, that's my.
So what I'm hearing is we have a wealth of options at right back.
Is Klopp really going to start Calvin Ramsey in a Champions League match that we really need to win
at Rangers
at the Ibrox? Yeah, like I can't. I mean, he's played in Scotland. He knows what that means. So yeah, I don't know.
There should be more to him.
That'll be. I mean, actually, the most interesting one to me will be right back. Like, who in the hell do you play at right back?
Wow,
you can't play Gomez.
Thank you. You made the Rangers game already seem more interesting than I thought it was.
I think we
selection dilemma.
I think because it's Rangers, we can rotate in midfield and play some lesser options. Maybe we play. I mean, we can play one of Henderson, Fab, or Thiago or
people whose names I can't remember. Play them too.
And then.
But he doesn't want to go into like the Ajax game as a must-win situation. He still has to get a result. And I think anything less than a win really like sets us up on a knife's edge.
I agree, but I don't know. I mean, you got to think about because we have City and Ajax on the back of this one is the thing. So we really should be thinking about resting a lot of players, honestly, if we can.
We should,
even though it's a risk, but I think it's a bigger risk to not rest, because then I think it sets us up for a really bad situation for both City and Ajax.
Hendo's not going to play. I don't think he'll play Thiago. Both of them look knackered at the end of that game.
They did.
I hope he rests both of them because we're definitely going to need him against City.
James Milner.
I think I honestly, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think Milner's going to start.
So
God bless him. I hope it's okay.
So this game against mediocre opposition we didn't care about, we put a lot of efforts into thinking about.
Well, because the games are coming
context
so quick.
though,
and so the thing is like City. So there's City, and here's the thing I say about City: if we manage to win the City game, it flips all the narrative on its head, I'm just saying it's not likely, but like it could happen. But if we don't win, we win. Whatever, it's going to be an intense match. We got to play
Yeah.
Ajax on the back of that, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I mean,
So,
that's a really important one.
so let's just cut down the Rangers chat. I think we play Nico Williams and Ryan Kent in our lineup. We're going to be fine for the Rangers game. Let's move on to City. Because honestly, you're right. He's picking the City team before he's picking the Rangers team, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got to. I mean, it's such a big match.
You don't think so? It does.
Well, like the one thing that gives me pause is that it could be his usual like deflection tactic, but he's already said the league is gone. He doesn't want to get embarrassed by Pep. I will say that.
Yeah.
He's not going to want to get embarrassed by Pep.
And he wants fourth place, right? He needs fourth place to get Champions League to buy like whoever, Jude Bellingham, whoever the player is, right?
Well, yeah, but again, like I don't think the tail of this season is anywhere near being even mixed, much less cooked. There's so much that's still got to happen. Like you've got a fucking heavy tournament right in the middle of the fucking season, and then I'm sure the Christmas period is going to be jam packed as well, as it usually is. Like you're going to have a lot of guys that are going to be in the red when they come back, whereas like quite a few of our guys are going to be watching games on television. So yes, there's so much context around all of this. You can't say out of hand, it doesn't matter because he's told us like the league is gone. Klopp and none of those guys are going to want to get rolled by it. So you are probably right that he's picking his team for City before he's choosing his lineup for Rangers. But you can't look past Rangers. Rangers are going to have to come at us. They're at home. Their fans aren't going to stand for them sitting back and doing what they did at Anfield. Yeah. They're probably seeing us as a wounded animal, and because of whatever the narrative is, even though they could have gotten smacked by us at Anfield, it'll be a different setup. So if Klopp goes in there with his ass hanging out, there's a chance that they could land a glove on us and it finishes 1-1, or we lose 1-0. So then we're really under the cosh against Ajax, and Ajax is probably, depending what tomorrow's situation is or Wednesday's situation was in the game against Napoli, that there could be tora against us when we play them. So like there's so much context. He's not gonna like just out of hand dismiss one versus the other. But you're probably more than right. I just wanted to posit the devil's advocate, saying that like we might have to be a cup team this year, and shag off the rest. Unfortunately, we've fallen into a period and a situation where we're going to have to kind of prioritize one over the other.
Yeah. So I said to someone on a text yesterday, which is I think this is more of a transition season than we might have thought, because clearly you've got some really young players, like a forward line of Diaz, Nunez, and Jota is like way different from where we've been, but there's like some need for those people to like sync up and achieve chemistry. If you so I'll go to Sean next, but I'll finish with you, Daz. If you had to pick a team that was going to beat City, or like at least challenge City, what does it look like? Because or do we not have a team that we can pick right now that you imagine could do that?
Ideally, if it was just names on a sheet based on previous experience and performance, I'd say it was pretty much exactly the team that played against Arsenal, based on what's available right now.
Yeah.
So now we don't have Trent and we don't have Luis Diaz, and we don't seem to have a formation or a tactical approach that's going to work against City. They'll pick us to pieces. But to answer your question more directly, it probably would have been the team that played against Arsenal, just given past performance and players that at their best will be able to get all 3 points over the weekend.
Sean, same question. Do you think we can beat them? And if so, what would it take in terms of personnel to make that happen?
I think we can. I think if we're going to stick with the 4-2-3-1, I think you can play Fabinho and Henderson in the 2, and you can play Thiago in the 10. and that gives us a little bit more defensive solidity, and you don't lose anything in the creative end. And so essentially you can kind of like fall back into a 4-3-3 in defending. And we'll have Gomez, who's more of a defensive option, less attacking. And you can kind of just play more conservatively. I think that's what I hope they go with. But you could also just go back to a 4-3-3 and adjust tactics and not have Gomez and Henderson attacking so much, which I think is probably what we should be doing anyway at this point. But I'm happy with 4-2-3-1 as long as it just helps us defend better.
Well, let me ask you this. I'll throw this spanner into the works. Like, do you think Hendo has it in him to be able to the amount of intensity that he need to be able to make that right hand side work in a 4-3-3? Like, do you have enough evidence to suggest?
Well,
that
I think I think. So my personal opinion is that the midfield is a mess this year, and that's why the team has not looked good. And a lot of it is because we're just asking Henderson to do way too much. We're asking Henderson and Harvey to do way too much when we're in the 4-3-3.
But it's the same. It's the same midfield from last year.
But the tactics are totally different. We're pushing Henderson, and we've been pushing Henderson and Trent way further forward and Salas further out wide. And basically that just leaves even more space behind Trent, which means it's more space for Fabinho to cover. And it just doesn't work. Like I thought last year, in a lot of cases, even though we had all that success, we would have been better off not pushing Henderson like we did so far forward, because it always left us open there. And we didn't really ever resolve that until Konate started playing all the time, because he had the pace to cover that area well. So I really, really, really hope we get some kind of midfield reinforcement in January, because especially given the way the season is compact and all the rest, we just need more depth and better depth in midfield right now than we have. And we know that Klopp wanted to go get 2 different midfielders this summer. Like, it's not a secret. It's just somehow we came away with none. And that to me, that feels like there was something that just fell through the cracks, at a higher level in terms of like, okay, if we thought we needed 2 midfielders, yeah, I get I get we wanted these 2, but you got to have a better backup option than this, where we end up with Artur on loan in the 11th hour. Like,
well, not so much. He's out for like 3 to 4 months now.
Well, now he's out, yeah, because we made a panic buy because we didn't address the issue we were trying to anyway. So I mean, but I think we can get a result against City, and I was wrong, by the way. We don't play Ajax. We play West Ham and then Forest, and then we play Ajax. So we actually play West Ham on the Wednesday after City, which is not easy, but it's at Anfield and it's not a Champions League match. So
they're struggling for form too. One thing I will say, that Sean, just to go back, if I may be so bold to interject here, Paul, is one thing I think that is one of the bigger differences in this season versus last is Klopp always said he wants us to be braver. And I think that the bravery's gone to foolhardiness at this point. It's almost like we feel like we felt like we were more invincible because we were in previous seasons, so we could get away with being braver because people were behind or someone would be there to sweep it up, and it just doesn't seem like we're managing to do it as well as we did. And I think that speaks to how easy it's been for people to cut through us, and the quality of chances that we're giving up. Whereas a couple of seasons ago, there wasn't a sharp intake of breath if it broke down on top of the 18-yard box. Whereas now it's like, it just looks like we're in a fucking flat out panic when it happens. So we're still trying to hit the same nail with the same hammers, which I think I said last week. And we need to buy a more effective nail or a different hammer.
So I would argue that the problem is not we choose one or the other. It's not that every player is not choosing one or the other. And sometimes we have the scenario where so the first minute goal against Arsenal was like Trent's playing a high line and Virgil's not playing a high line, and that allows Martinelli to receive a pass that would have been offside if Virgil had, various things. Trent defends it differently. Martinelli wouldn't have been free. But if 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 Virgil's defending it the way Trent is, it's offside. I think there's a bunch of those things going on. I don't know why, but it's so I don't think it's about intensity. I don't think it's about we changed our tactics. I think it's about the defense, which they were at the beginning of last season, they were more out of sync, like being out of sync. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Well,
But
I think Trent I think that Trent is guilty of kind of hero balling a little bit. I think that because he's taking so many pelters about his defensive acumen. I think their second goal was testament to that. Like, he vacated a space that he didn't need. That he went to try and make that tackle, and I think that it's the rush of blood to the head kind of thing is like, I'll show you sons of bitches just how good I am, and he ends up exposing himself a little bit more. So I'm not in his head, but sometimes it's what it seems like. Someone explained it to me like whack-a-mole. You just don't know where he's going to pop up.
I do agree in the second goal, but in many ways, like Henderson being there will confuse the situation. Whereas if Henderson had been there in the other situations, like the Brighton game and the first goal, it would not have been so much of an issue.
So just on that specific goal, Martinelli carries the ball about 60 yards. Henderson should have just taken him out because Trent was there to cover, but that doesn't happen. So they get into the box. Henderson is going to get beat. I mean, if you watch the replay, Martinelli just has him on toast. And I think Trent sees that, and he probably should have just stayed where he was, but he probably half panicked.
Yeah.
And went to go meet that, and Martinelli just pulls it back. Henderson goes flying the other way, and then he's open for the cross. But so if Trent doesn't do that, though, and he tries to cut off the pass to the man closest to goal, all Martinelli has to do is cut it back, and whoever's coming into the box is going to be wide open at the penalty spot. And I think that's what happened there. Trent still should have sat and not charged out, but I think it's a lot more logical than people are.
That ball wasn't designed for Saka, though.
No, it wasn't. I mean, Saka was only on side because Martinelli pulled it back and Henderson kept going. Otherwise,
played him on,
because Tsimikas played him offside, but Henderson played him onside.
No, but I'm saying it wasn't designed for Saka. If you look, who was it lets it go through his legs?
Oh no, you're right. Yeah, so I mean, even that, like, it could have, the ball could have been cleared anyway. I mean, it's, I don't, we talked about it today. You can nitpick and point to different things. I basically just feel like at the end of the day, Klopp and Pep are not putting our players in positions to succeed.
No,
they're asking them to do things that are just not capable of being done right now. And we're getting in trouble. And that's the most frustrating part, is that we haven't fully adjusted yet. Like we need to adjust something so that we're more defensively sound.
But there's a big enough body of evidence to suggest that how many games have we played in all competitions where it just doesn't, it's not working consistently,
right,
or well enough in most situations to suggest that it's something that you should persist with. Because again, the margins are so fine. If it had clicked, and I think that's why Klopp said like the first 3 games of the season are going to be our preseason too, because there was clearly something that they're working on that they were hoping they would click, and it's just not. And it's, if anything, it's having a more detrimental effect to the way that guys are playing football.
I feel like this is a much longer conversation, but I'm also realizing we're still recording.
This is what the people want, Paul. This is what the people want.
Oh, who the hell's still listening by now? Come on.
We're dropping knowledge. Our own copyrighted knowledge.
Final thoughts. So we think things are not quite right. Beating City feels like a bit of a stretch. Am I stretching that?
We're gonna win.
Awesome.
We're definitely not going to be favored.
So the whatever the miasmi whatever test on this is working. What is that? What? I'm talking. Look at you, Daz. What is the drink?
Oh, the mimosa.
The mimosa. Oh yes. How successful has it generally been?
It's 0-2.
Okay, let's not
very close both times.
Let's not even bother with that.
I'd give it a 1-1.
Yeah. Okay. So we could. But anyway, this feels a terrible ending, which I may even edit. But Daz, Sean, thank you so much for joining me. We will be back actually, I'm not sure if we will be back this week because I'll be in England. So we may be back sort of next week to talk about the City game and the West Ham game, which I will also be at.
If we beat City, I'm sure you're going to want to do a pod, Paul.
He'll do a podcast topless, running around with a shirt over his head.
That's the thing. It can still happen. You know?
Yeah. I didn't feel like you need to give that away. Okay. Thank you. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with a friend. Follow us at First State Kopites on Twitter. We only tweet and retweet from sources we think are credible. Finally, music is courtesy of Hypnotic. They're a Welsh electro-pop band, and you can find them at https://hyperfollow.com/hypnotic. Hypnotic is HYPENOTIC. Thanks so much to them.